The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the presenters and guests, and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the Cincinnati-Hamilton County Community Action Agency or its Head Start program.
It's time for the percolator. It's time for the percolator. It's time for the percolator. It's time for the
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Parent Connection podcast this evening. I have my co-hosts, Andre and Bruce, and we are coming back from a short little break. How was you guys' break, everybody?
Man, busy, networking, doing a lot of volunteer work over at the church, assisting with the food drives, meeting new people, networking for the fatherhood program, missing my co-host. So I'm good. How y'all been?
Still moving, trying to make $1 in the difference.
Man.
That's good. That's good.
I moved into a new event space. It's larger.
That's
Amen.
great. All right. Congratulations.
Booked and busy. That's all
Let's
I'm
get it
saying.
going. Hey, man. Round of applause. See what I'm saying? Entrepreneur spirit is an amazing
Business owner.
Boop. Yes.
So tonight is a pretty serious topic, and I think we should kind of dive right in. Tonight we do have a special guest with us who's going to give us commentary. She's also going to give us her professional opinion on abuse, and we were talking about emotional, physical, and sexual abuse.
Amen.
Yeah, man.
We will be
Amen.
talking about parent-to-parent abuse and parent-to-child abuse.
Amen.
Yeah. Well, it's a whole lot of that
Miss
going
Erica, would you like to take a moment just to introduce yourself and tell everybody, all of our listeners, all about you?
Well, thank you. My name is Erica Ogletree. Right now, I have a couple of positions that I run. I am a supervisor at a large nonprofit in the area, Talbert House. I supervise our Safeguards program, which is a specialized program working with trauma. We work with kids and adults, families. We do individual group work and family therapy as well. I have a team of therapists and case managers, and we work with those who not only perpetrate abuse, but those who actually are victims of it as well. And then I have a private practice in the Springdale area, Tremendous Care, and I do take insurance there as well as private pay clients, but I see kids and adults there. I do see a lot of trauma victims in my private practice as well.
Shout her out.
Yeah.
Tremendous care.
Amen.
Glad to have you part of the podcast.
Thank you for
Yes,
coming.
thank you
Thanks
for
for
Really
having
appreciate
me.
it.
Yeah.
I'm excited to be here.
So one of the topics that we want to discuss is my mama did it, her mama did it, and we all ended up okay. That seems to be something that a lot of people, especially I'll speak for the Black community, tend to say that a lot. Just because it happened to her mama, and it happened to her mama, and it happened to her mama, and everybody says that they ended up okay, but don't know that they ended up with PTSD, don't realize that they ended up with depression, don't realize where the suicidal thoughts come from, don't understand why they became drug addicts, don't
Amen.
understand why they became alcoholics, because one traumatic event in your life can cause a whole, for your whole life to just spiral.
Mhm.
What do you all think about that?
Well, I'm going to speak on that. It seemed like, when they say her mama did it, my mama did it, it's like it was passed down without healing. So, and then
That's good.
in that
That's
case,
good.
it's like, in certain situations, you got to give your time to heal. But if you just sweep it up under the rug and think like, okay, I'm going to be okay, I'm going to go throughout my day and do this and that. But little do you understand the problem is still there because you haven't confronted the problem to correct the problem. So when it gets passed down, it's like, okay, how does this person deal with it? Or how did you deal with it in order for me to figure out how I had to deal with it? Either way it go, without healing, it will never be solved. So it'll be an ongoing problem.
For sure. I say, I always caution people that when we talk this talk, so we do our best to try to look at the entire scope, right?
Right.
Like, so what we're talking about, like you said, is generational discipline, what that looks like, how it causes all different sets of trauma, and it just continue to perpetuates.
Right.
I will say I agree, and we have to look broader as to like where it came from. You know what I'm saying? If we're speaking of American history, before we you know what I'm saying, just say we say Black history, right? American history was built on violence and stuff like that. So that became the way that we were taught. We talked about this in previous podcasts too, right? Like
Yeah, we
were
did.
taught you can't. We kind of taught do what I want you to do, or I hurt you. Like that becomes the motif for the entire nation, right? So as we talk about people going through that in the different disciplines and our kids and stuff like that, it becomes okay. So when this says like, oh, my mama did it, her mama did it, and we all end up okay. Now you're talking about, right, the people who are coming from the bottom for the most part, and we think okay means like in the sense that we're surviving, because like I was taught like, okay, if your arm ain't cut off, you good, walk it off. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's just kind of like that aspect of it. So I always like just like to paint the broader picture, let it be known, like, okay, it comes from something. It ain't just this space of like, oh, okay, people are just, you know what I'm saying, going through it and they just trying to take it on. No, like this has kind of been taught. But again, like I said, these are just the bits and pieces that I know. I would love to hear from our esteemed specialist today.
Yeah, most definitely. Let's get your intake on that.
Sure. Like when it comes to trauma, it becomes a big deal. I agree with a lot of what you guys are saying. And we do have to have that concept of understanding that we're speaking in such a broad scope. We're not going to speak to every individual aspect of it at once.
Amen.
We have to be mindful that people are going to have different experiences of the same thing. If we're all in the same room and a trauma happens because of our experiences before we got to that room, we're going to experience that trauma differently. So with that, like you think about it, we're born with two fears. Fear of falling, fear of loud noises. Anything else is taught. So through experience, that's when we actually...
Sorry, that's what we say whenever somebody gives us a jewel to take home, and we should hold precious. Gemstone, gotta let it breathe. So you mind repeating? We're born with two fears, and everything else is taught. What are the two fears we're born with?
Falling and loud noises, and that's strictly survival.
Amen.
You think about survival, falling, hitting your head, falling off a cliff back in caveman days, things like that, and then loud noises, animals that can kill you. And so really everything else is taught through the experiences that we have. And so we think about when you talk about growing up and her mama did it, my mama did it, I'm okay. Well, when you know better, you do better. But until we give somebody more knowledge, they may not know better. And they may think that they're okay when they're walking around with an arm falling off.
Right.
With that, like the hope piece becomes, because fear can be taught and trauma can be experienced, self-regulation can be taught, healing can be experienced.
Amen.
And that's something that can come through therapy. Therapy is cool. It's not a bad thing to see a therapist. Therapy helps. There's a time and a place for it. It's not for forever. Some people go to therapy for what's called brief therapy. They might see a therapist 3 to 5 times and be done. And some people see a therapist for longer. It's okay. You get what you need to get and you get moving on with the rest of life. And that's why in my practice, my slogan is be your best you, because again, you're the expert on you. I might be a content expert on some things, but you've been you your whole life. So who am I to tell you how to be the best version of you? But I can bring some support to help you on that journey and walk with you just a little bit, and then you take it from there and go on and be the best version of yourself you can be.
Amen.
I definitely agree.
Right. Most definitely.
When I started therapy, well, I don't know. I grew up a little different. So therapy to me wasn't like faux pas. But when I talk to other people about therapy, everybody thinks that therapy is, I don't know. I try to tell people like, how cool is it that you get to talk to somebody who doesn't even know you? Doesn't know anything about you. They can't judge you. And they can't tell anybody else about what's going on with you, right?
Exactly.
So who better to talk to than somebody who can't do anything by law?
And like you said, hold on. And I'd like to add to that, it's also great because like everything you said, plus it's the one person where when you tell them your story, and you know how we can talk about parents, you could tell them that, and they ain't got their own thing to kind of throw in. Like that whole time is dedicated to you.
Yes.
And you gotta talk about what you feeling. You know what I'm saying? Like that's it's more rare than gold.
Yeah.
Amen.
It is for
But
sure.
you know, when you bring up the whole therapy and the counseling thing, they look at it the wrong way because they're like, I don't want to go talk to nobody. I'm good. I'm like, people will say that, but at the same time, you'll go to the session, you'll think one session or maybe 2 sessions is cool, but once you go home, it's like the problem is still there because until you can find it within yourself to self-check yourself as well as learn how to heal better, why would you sit up here and only have maybe 1 or 2 sessions of therapy or counseling when you may need counseling for maybe months or maybe years, depending on how bad your situation is, or depending on if you're willing to look into the mirror and confront yourself about all the doors that you haven't closed yet.
Right.
So when it gets to that point to where, like they say, hurting people hurt other people.
Amen.
So when it gemstone.
Woo! Gemstone.
Okay.
It's
Hurt
like when
people.
it
Hurt people.
It's like when they say hurting people hurt other people, it's like that just goes to show that who's ever doing the hurting, they're not thinking about nobody else's feelings, because there is a piece within them to where they feel like they have to hurt other people to get through their day just to manage, versus sitting down, taking time within themselves to either get the crowd or just yell or just go in the room and seclude yourself from the outside world and just actually ask yourself, like, how do I deal with, the self-hurt as well as learning how to be a better person just to get over this whole situation, versus taking it out on your child, your spouse, or a family member, whatever, because there's a lot of that going on, because there's so many families that's so divided now. And some of the reasons why they're divided is because of this.
Yeah.
So it's like, once you find that niche, and you gotta pick and see like what's the best option, but you only got so much time left.
See, and I think that part's important, like you said, because I think there's this aspect to being traumatized and stuff like that, where you stuck at that space, right? Like a training that I went to, I think I've talked about it on here before. I feel bad if I did. It's been a while since we recorded, so I ain't seen what we done did in a while. So if you hear some repeat, hey man, dive in. So I'll say this, right? Like a training that I had was that let's say you cutting the grass, right? You moving, you cutting the grass, and everything's cool, and you get bit by a snake. You know what I'm saying? And you like, oh, you know what I'm saying? So whatever happens from getting bit by a snake, may have been poisonous, may have like a whole golf ball got to get cut out your leg. You know what I'm saying?
Reaction.
You feel me, right? So that's where you at now. Now you stuck with that moment. You stuck with that traumatic event. It's on you, right? So then, let's say a month later, years later, you know what I'm saying? You cutting the grass again. Took you a while to get back on that road, but you cutting the grass again. So now you cutting the grass, and then you roll up and you see a coiled fire hose, right?
Yeah.
And your mind, bam, oh, it's a snake. You know what I'm saying? Because mind you, you're a little bit more cautious now, so you like looking for signs of anything. Once you find yourself in a familiar, similar situation, may not even be that much familiar. You know what I'm saying? But every time you see a coil, you might not have been cutting the grass. You might have just been out trying to kick it somewhere, and somebody got their water hose in the backyard. So you running with your friends, and then you see it again. Fight, flight, or freeze. Then you know what I'm saying? You don't know what to do or whatever, and everybody else looking at you like you crazy. Like, yo, man, it's just a water hose.
Took you back to that situation.
But it took you right back there. So like if somebody in the household where they used to, you know what I'm saying, yelling, arguing, screaming, fighting and stuff like that, or if they see that the fighting and stuff like that starts with, man, you stupid. You don't know nothing. Why don't you know what you're doing? How you don't know what you're doing? Then they go to school, and now let's say they child, let's talk from the parents' perspective. They send their child to school, their child has some issues, they show up in the meeting, you know what I'm saying, and they like, well, we just don't know what's going on with little Johnny. Now I'm feeling like, oh, you done told me I'm stupid. You done told me I don't know how to raise my kids. I don't know what I'm doing.
But you know that
I'm just reacting from my own trauma type thing, right?
But you know that also shows that
it's not bad.
When you say that and you speak a valid point, because that's a lot of instability. So when it's concerning the child, they're going to show all that instability in the classroom as well. So when it gets to that point, it's like, of course, they're going to send either the people in for a conference, or whether they may send the staff or the faculty to the home.
Amen.
See, usually, like I said, they'll start with the visit, or they'll start with the conference, or vice versa. Either way it goes, they're going to investigate the problem. Because like once that child goes to school, and whatever type of behavior that they're going to show is going to raise some questions like, okay, what's going on with mom, or what's going on with dad, or if it's instability to where the child is bounced from different households got different rules. So it's like all that stuff factored in. It's like they're going to be sitting there, okay, we got to do this, we got to do this, we got to go to this house, we got to go to this house, we got to find out what the problem is. So technically, they got to find out what that problem is, because if they don't,
I'll say we're gonna dive because working in the schools. We gonna dive into that at one day because I'm telling you,
I just want to make a point to
man.
your point, Andre. When you use the perfect example of the garden hose, when so after you've got initially big, now you are much more cautious about all the situations that you walk into that might look just like that.
Amen.
You know what I'm saying? But you can apply that to so many things.
Yeah.
It's like when you've been in an abusive relationship, or when you have had friends that have hurt you, or I don't know, I can't think of any other more examples.
Right.
That applies just to so many different areas of your life, because myself, I'm even more cautious. I used to have a crap ton of friends. Now I look around, I got 3, because I just don't, like, I done been hurt. This person that did this to me, that person that did that to me. Now I walk into every situation just too cautious, when I probably shouldn't be.
Amen.
It's not my fault they did what they did. They did what they did, but you just keep kind of like tiptoeing. And you just get slower and slower every time you get into every situation.
Amen.
Yeah,
still gotta make sure you guard it.
Yeah, what you're all talking about are trauma reminders or trauma triggers.
Right.
And again, if you don't know that, then you walk into that situation, you keep getting hit upside the head with the same thing because you don't see it coming. But the reality of it is you've gone through something, and trauma's funny because we hold it in our body. And so all of your senses, there are 8, not just 5, but there are 8 sensory systems that encode everything. Sitting here right now, you got your sense of touch encoding your butt in the seat, or the headphones on your ears, your sense of hearing with the sounds, and we can go through all of them, but it's all coding up. And so when trauma happens and fight or flight takes place, like, you start encoding even deeper and having that impression in your brain of what you've experienced, so that you're able to stay alive. Because at the end of the day, our brain's job is to do what it's got to do to keep us alive.
Amen.
So you will stop flowing blood to your frontal lobes. You don't think your way through anymore. Blood flows to large muscle groups, so you can run, you can fight, or sometimes people end up with freeze. And there's a 4th trauma response called fawn. And fawn looks like you are going with the flow, whereas freeze is you're immobilized. Fawn is like kind of fawn and flow. You go with the flow, and it looks like you're going along with whatever trauma is happening to you, but the reality of it is you're stuck, you're immobilized, because again, your body is not reacting in a fight or flight way. So go ahead.
No, go ahead. Keep going.
It's all in reaction, though, right? It's all in reaction, though, right?
It is. And so those reactions are mistaken for other things like ADHD and hyperactivity, when it might be actually hypervigilance and looking over your shoulder because you're used to having to look over your shoulder, or a pot or pan is going to fly upside your head.
Amen.
You're going to get beat up, or you're going to get raped, or all kinds of things that happen. And sometimes when you are freezing and it looks like you are being obstinate and just not want to do what you got to do, but your body just doesn't know how to react at that point, and you're so overloaded with adrenaline and cortisol in your brain and your body that you just don't know what to do. So there's all science behind this, and that's just thinking about the brain's aspect of it. But again, you think about your whole body when you think about your sensory aspects of what's happened. Again, that might be why somebody might not like a certain color, a certain smell, a certain texture, because that could have been encoded with a traumatic experience that they've had in their life. So there's all kinds of different things that we just don't know about. And again, until you get into a safe space, which for a lot of people can be therapy, to process what's going on and to tell your story in a way that you can start to connect thoughts and feelings in a way that helps you understand your trauma wasn't your fault. It wasn't your fault that people did you the way that they did. They made that choice. And so, but you're able to kind of absolve yourself of that guilt that we feel and the shame that we feel. Guilt and shame are funny because with one, like guilt, you can feel guilty about doing something. Shame is internal. That something's wrong with me. And a lot of times when trauma happens, people think shame. They think something's wrong with me. What did I do to cause this? And so it's about helping them process that and understand that you didn't cause that. Somebody else made a choice. It was a horrible choice with horrible consequences, but you can be better for it, learning to put the proper words and the proper feelings on that to help you understand that all emotions are legit. you know, they teach us things.
Amen.
And so
Pretty
I
much
can
like it's
Yeah.
it's like
go
a
on this all
balance,
day.
like, you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
it's like much like
And
a
I
balance.
think,
No, I'm saying like ain't it pretty much like a balance? So you won't.
Well, it just depends on the situation. Because
Right.
in some situations, yeah, you're trying to balance out that certain emotion that you're feeling. But in
Right.
some situations, the emotion is a manufactured emotion. You think
Right.
about it after the fact of what I shoulda did, shoulda, coulda, woulda. And that's a manufactured emotion because that's something that didn't really take place in the event. It's an afterthought when you're like, "Dag, I should have ran," but you were 5 years old. How could
Right.
you have run? Where would you
Right.
have gone?
Hold
Yeah.
on.
Right.
Hold on,
I
real
think,
quick.
I think the point that you made about.
Let her get it out. Go ahead. No, I gotta let you get it out. Keep going. Yes.
Yeah, right.
Yes. Go ahead, sister.
Hold on, almost. I think.
Okay, I'll
Okay,
take a
we'll
quick
get back
pause.
to
Hold on,
that.
because we has had
Okay.
a lot. I want to, Rich, when you get the chance, please, gemstone, all that. Okay,
Man.
that's what I'm trying to stop it for. Okay, the 4 trauma responses: fight, flight, freeze, and now fawn. Gemstone, all that.
Big
Gemstone.
You know what I'm saying?
gemstone.
Go back, you'll see she broke everyone down. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Also,
okay.
She did that.
the part right after that.
I was talking to. Well, I was gonna speak to what was it? The safe space.
Bam.
Yeah.
Go ahead, my sister.
Yeah.
Gemstone, all that. Go ahead, my
Yeah.
sister. Dive
Okay.
in.
So I think that a safe space is important, and I don't think a lot of people see therapy as a safe space.
Man.
But I feel like a therapist is a I don't know. I want to say like a soft soundboard to be able to bounce out how I really feel. Not that I'm angry or I'm upset with you or anything, but I can just be angry at that situation. I could be angry that somebody did that to me. I can yell, I can scream, I could cry, I can do whatever it is I want to do. And as a therapist, you don't shut me down. You allow me to work through all of those emotions. And which leads me to the next point that we wanted to talk about, which was how silence kills. And how everybody gives us this hush, a hush, be quiet. What goes on in this house stays in this house. I don't know if anybody has watched that documentary, Abducted in Plain Sight.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my
I've
God.
heard
I have not seen it yet, but now I've heard
I can give you a
people at
brief
the job
synopsis.
talking about it like straight up, like
I can give you a brief synopsis. So
break it down.
Right.
there are 2 families that live across the street from each other, right?
Show enough.
Okay. So one family, they become friends, neighborhood friends or whatever. So the father of the family that's across the street gets close to the family across the street. So to break it, I'm gonna kind of keep it PG, but this person,
Things went on.
yes, he went to the father, then to the mother, only to get to the daughter.
Wow.
And the mentality of this entire family, like, it just doesn't seem real. Because how did you, father, engage with this man? Mother, you engaged with the man. The daughter, she was a child, so she engaged with the man, and he abducted her.
Right.
Right in front of their eyes, and they did not even care. They didn't even call the police for like a week the first time he took her. It was just like, I was just like, I could, and he warped all of them, and he got everybody in their own world secluded into him and what they had going on. So nobody told the other person what was going on. And then by the time everything happened and he abducted her and tried to marry her in Mexico, it was too late.
Right.
But it was just like mind blowing, like a whole entire family. How does that happen? How do you process a trauma like that? Like, I didn't believe it, because I didn't believe anybody could just, how would you let somebody sleep in the bed with your child? You're a convicted child molester. How did you convince this family to sleep in a bed with your child
Hey.
and listen to inappropriate tapes 3 to 4 times a week for years? You're right.
Hey, just so we're clear, in these great United States that we live in, it's been legal to marry off somebody's child all but maybe 40, 50 years ago. You know what I'm saying? I feel like in most states.
Depends on the state you're in. Like,
right,
the age of consent, like Ohio, I believe, is 16, but some states are as young as 14.
Yeah, they're changing
consent themselves.
That ain't good.
Hold on.
Yet they're changing the what age you can smoke cigarettes. Come on now.
Hold on. I
But
just
you
want to
can get
hold.
married.
I want to hold on to that truth.
They doing too much.
Hold on, I want to hold on to that truth one more time. You saying this is current law, or so current law? Somebody can marry my 16-year-old child in Ohio.
Age of consent.
Age
in
of consent
Ohio.
is 16.
What?
I'll tell you something.
Not mine.
I know we're here. We're
I don't
professionals.
play.
We're professionals. We are not in any way implying or implicating anything. And all thoughts and beliefs are of the host alone.
Right.
Don't put the CAA, the Head Start on it. But I tell you, won't happen. But I just wanted to dive into that right. Just real fast, cause see, that's what I'm saying. Like in this country, there like I said, there are always so many layers, and I know I always try to take it a bit deeper, because I get evolution as a scientific thing, right? So I get the fact that I can't tell you for 40 years straight, like, you know what I'm saying? Like a lot of people today be like, oh man, you know, we free. Like I asked my son, when did he think like blacks had like as many civil rights and freedoms, like to be truly free? My man tells me he think about 100 years.
What?
First of all, he told me this 2 years ago. That hurt my soul. Hate the education system. I'm like, excuse me? You know what I'm saying? And I had to break it down for him. I'm like, son, you do recognize you got family members. Your grandma don't remember a time when she used to go visit our family in the South. There was places she couldn't go.
Right.
Like your grandma ain't even, she just hit 60. You know what I'm saying? Like it was that deep.
They do make it seem like it was that long ago. You know what I mean? You think way back when, and I think it might not have been until some years back that I even realized like, dang, that was only.
That'd be the point.
And you know, it's a lot of events that went on back then that's still going on right now.
That's my point. But see, and I give a level of understanding of that because I feel like that's the way to help, right? Like I said, like my purpose in life, I feel is the agent of hope. You know what I'm saying? And try to move things in the way. I feel like I can't do that if I don't give a full scope of understanding. So when you get like, what was the brother's name? Used to own the Clippers. Got fired for talking wreck. You know what I'm saying? Y'all know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know you're talking. I can't think of doing that, but yeah.
If my producer could put it up on the thing, or somebody, but whoever it is,
right? We're gonna slide that across the screen.
It's gonna pop up. We're gonna get that. Right. But I got that. Like, I'm like, how old is he? Like 90. What? To him, owning a basketball team and trading off for these millions of dollars for these young black bodies, to him was astronomically. Man. He felt like he was the reason for civil rights at that point. Like, what? Came from a day I could buy 2, 3, 4 y'all. My daddy bought 2, 3, 4 y'all for a nigga. Right. I'm paying you how many million? I call y'all whenever I want to call you, when I want to call it. That's what I'm talking about. Like, but I gave some understanding of that, not because like, oh, it's okay that he did it, but I'm saying evolution can only move so fast. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So when we talk about these things and we talk about, because like I said, in my, because we're speaking, like I said, not now we're moving, not being a bit beyond trauma, like to abuse or the trauma caused by that abuse.
Right. I said, but if you think about it, like there's this thing people used to talk about, lash and whip therapy. So you think about back in the times where black people were whipped into submission, and then that has roots in corporal punishment today because we were taught whip into submission. And so like that, it does play a factor. That's some of that historical trauma that there have been studies that show that people's genes have been changed because of trauma that they've gone through. And they talked about that in terms of slavery, and they talked about that in terms of the Holocaust.
Amen.
So those things are real.
And I think that I totally agree with what you're saying. So again, that leads me to, I think it's generational. So, and I think that it's passed down even into from the ancestors to their home. So when somebody sexually abuses or physically abuses someone in their home, they abuse them into submission.
And two, sometimes so I talked about those 4 stress responses. Parents have like the double whammy because you got your stress response and you got your child's stress response. They don't always match. So those parents could have been in a freeze response and not known how to respond to this guy taking their kids. And then also, by the way, people who engage in that type of behavior, as far as like that type of abuse, not always, but often, they're very charismatic. And so they can talk people into doing what they want them to do. It's something that they've spent time and energy developing. It's a skill. Charisma is a skill, just like playing basketball. You practice at it, you get better at it.
Amen.
But with the trauma responses, like a parent may be a freezer and their child might be a flighter. That's a horrible combination, because you freeze up when Johnny's acting a certain kind of way and Johnny's tearing stuff up and you don't know what to do. Right. And then that looks like, oh, you crappy parent, Erica. You didn't do what you're supposed to do to take care of Johnny. Well, I'm trying to deal with my stuff. And so parents have to be cognizant of their own stuff and how it comes across in their ability to parent their children. And they have to be mindful of that. And there are things they can do. We talk a lot about building savory skills. And savory skills have like lots of different parts of it, but some of the parts are like building us up as a family. How do we deal with stress and trauma? How do I deal with it? How do you deal with it? How do we deal with it when we're together? How do we become connected as a family? What do we do to intentionally make sure that we're on the same page or that we're able to get past difficult times? What do we do to relax as a family? So there's a whole list, and I can email you guys if you want.
Yeah, that would be great.
But
what advice would you give to a family with someone who may have been molested or sexually molested, and you know, they were told to keep quiet, or they didn't keep quiet, they told a parent, but the parent had a freeze and didn't necessarily react in the way that the child would have thought that they should? What advice would you give to someone in a predicament like that?
Yeah, unfortunately, that happens more often than like we would like.
What's the example of freeze?
So what you would want to do is you want to, since you're not sure what actually happened, go in for an assessment and find out what actually happened. You can go in for like a regular mental health assessment with like a licensed professional mental health provider, whether it's a counselor, a social worker, a marriage and family therapist. And then if it's close enough to the time of when they think the abuse may have happened, they'll probably want to go in for an actual forensic exam. And I know the Marison Center is where we typically refer kids, because they'll get an actual physical exam. You can also go to Children's Hospital as well to get a physical exam to see if there's signs that sexual trauma has occurred, including molestation. And then from there, you develop a treatment plan. There are evidence-based treatment plans, trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, cognitive processing therapy, and there's a lot of sensory motory therapies as well that a kid and their family can engage in. And the best thing is the family. A kid or an adult who's experienced trauma is not a problem. You don't send them to therapy like they're a problem. You have to work with the whole system. So that person can be your individual client, but you're going to want to engage the family. You're going to want to build up natural supports that are going to help them, because what happens is after therapy, and we touched on it at one point, you go back home.
And it's all still there. We talk about, listen, I swear at my job, I've been harping on this. I work somewhere. I'm not going to put the plug in right here. I work somewhere. You know what I'm saying? I'm not, I mean, just because it's just, it gets sticky. You know what I'm saying? They're on this rebrand right now. It's all, you know what I mean? Like, well, I think this would be a great look for them. They might be, well, you're not authorized. And I'm cool. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm cool. But I'll say this. We are a place to work with kids, and we help, work with children all the time, right? You know what I'm saying? And I've been harping on it for the longest, like, well, if we're doing these things with the kids, because my job is to work with the parents. So I'm a parent advocate. I work for the parents. I show up for them in meetings. I help guide them along the lines. Okay, this is how you advocate for yourself, for your child, because no one loves your child more than you. You know, all this stuff, right? And it always keeps bothering me. Like, if we are working with the children and we can teach them all these wonderful skills, we give them little things to do to calm themselves down, teach them to touch their pressure points and all these things to try to manage their stress and their stuff. Now, mind you, these are children that are very impressionable, learning a lot, and we send them right back to the lion's den. Yeah, I'm telling you, and I grew up. Again, I grew up how I grew up. You know what I'm saying? Wasn't always the best. I grew up with a bunch of people who was what they was. We weren't always the best, but I swear we were always good, morally sound people. We just was raised, and this is what I keep telling everybody. The rules that applied to us were different. Like, the rules that apply to a house cat do not apply to a lion in the jungle. You can you can stay cats all day. Just you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, you can say it's a cat all day, but I'm like, bro, how we gotta get it? You know what I'm saying? So for you, you know what I'm saying, you got them salsa milk brought to you about me and mine. We gotta go hunt, you know what I'm saying? Share with the pack, you know what I mean? All that kind of stuff. So that brings me to that space where I was gonna ask you even then, because I love what you said about trying to be holistic healing. So what is it when a parent may ignore or blame their child for whatever sexual abuse that is brought to them? You know what I'm saying? Because I
put blame on the child.
Right, because we firmly believe, being the Parent Connection podcast, you know what I'm saying, as a team, I believe, you know what I'm saying, we firmly believe that no parent ever wants to not be the best parent they can be, whether they're equipped or whether they or what that best parent looks like. Like I know people who I came up with literally for a mom, you know what I'm saying, that I've known my whole life. Like, you know what I'm saying, her child who I grew up with, her biggest thing was, shorty, do not make it to 16, don't be pregnant. Because of her own trauma. So that was her thing. Be 16, don't be pregnant.
Right.
Her education, how good she was in school, all the other stuff wasn't really as big a deal. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It was, but to her, that was the milestone. So while maybe so like, if a parent may ignore their child or may
know exactly what's going on and doesn't do anything, or seemingly doesn't do anything about it.
What can that be? What is that? What is that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, what's
from the
going
parent's
on there?
It's time for the percolator. 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 It's time for the percolator.
Saying you don't have to keep asking.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the presenters and guests, and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the Cincinnati-Hamilton County Community Action Agency or its Head Start program.